Hey guys,
How?
I'm gonna get real with you guys for a minute. Lilo and Stitch is one of the first movies I remember getting emotionally invested in. I'm sure it had happened before, but this movie is the first time I distinctly remember being saddened by the events unfolding before me on screen, and it's not hard to see why. This film beautifully portrays a well-written, perfectly paced, and uncomfortably realistic struggle of two sisters trying to adjust to their new family situation. Lilo doesn't want to see Nani as her new mom, and she's still clearly recovering from their parents' sudden death. Meanwhile, Nani is doing everything she can to be an adequate parental figure to Lilo, even though it's clear that she's just not ready for this kind of role. She's only 18, barely an adult, and you can see her youth shine through her well-intentioned actions, but it just isn't enough in the eyes of the foster system. On top of these two being incredible characters individually, they have an incredibly realized relationship. They don't always get along, they argue, they don't understand fully what the other person is going through, and neither of them wants the hand they were dealt, but they still find the love in their hearts to be there for each other and to reconcile no matter what. These two are the emotional core of the film. On top of that, the film is coupled with this surprisingly excellent subplot of an alien experiment crashing down on Earth and getting adopted by Lilo, while being hunted down by two very funny alien scientists. Normally when films have two wildly different plots like this, one is significantly better than the other, but that simply isn't the case with this film. These two plots mesh together perfectly because of the emotional parallels between Lilo and Stitch. Stitch was built to destroy, and because of that, he feels like he can't be a good pet or friend to Lilo, and he blames himself for the situation getting worse. At the same time, Lilo acts out due to the emotional turmoil she suffered from her parents' sudden death, and the hardships she faces at home due to Nani not really being ready to be a pseudo-parent. But when Stitch comes along, Lilo needs to learn to be a good mentor and parent to him, just like Nani needs to learn to be a good parent and mentor to Lilo. On top of this, Jumba and Pleakley are a hilarious antagonistic duo who get a tangible and believable redemption, while Gantu serves as a legitimately threatening villain who poses a real threat to Stitch and Lilo's relationship. With all of that in mind, this remake had none of that. I literally don't know where to start with this one. I don't want to sound scattershot, but there are so many layers to this movie's mediocrity that it hurts. And yes, I must stress mediocrity here, because unlike what I bet most of you are hoping for, this wasn't a completely desolate void of a film that left me broken and questioning my life choices. It did a few decent things that save it from a complete failure. Here's the thing, the bad stuff in the context of the original film is really bad. But if you remove said context and just treat this like a new Disney family film, it's not the worst. But here's the thing, this is a different type of remake based on a different type of film. Because the original movie, and by extension this remake, is the context. A huge chunk of live-action Disney remakes, including the majority of the ones in my ranking video, are all based off of fables, fairy tales, old novels, and other stories. Nearly every one of these remakes, and by extension the original Disney movies, is adapting previous works. That's not to say these movies are bad or lazy. Many of Disney's adaptational movies, and even a lot of their live-action remakes, have a lot of heart and soul put into them to not only make them good, but to make them stand apart from the original source material, culminating in a series of more lighthearted but still beautiful and emotionally powerful feature films. A lot of these films, both original and live action, function and stand alone from their source material. Though they may not be accurate to said source material, they still stand as pretty good films in their own right, sometimes. And sometimes they can either be surprisingly accurate to the source material, or complement it in a nice way that gets people interested in learning more. A lot of people I know credit their love for Greek mythology to Disney's Hercules. And I know several people from my school in my literature and history classes who just gush about the creepy darkness of old school fairy tales, and they still credit classic Disney films for sparking their interest and still enjoy said Disney films despite their more lighthearted tone. My point is, these animated films can be good, or even if they're not, they lead people to discovering good things through the source material. But where this remake suffers is the fact that the original Lilo and Stitch was not based on a book or an older story, it was its own damn thing. Meaning that this remake can lead people nowhere but to the vastly superior original movie. This movie was doomed to that fate because it's remaking an iconic, unique, recent, and beautiful original story. It's not like Disney's 1950 Cinderella is the only Cinderella movie, because Disney doesn't own the Cinderella story, but they sure do own Lilo and Stitch, so this movie was made solely as an ego-stroking cash grab that preys upon audiences who find Stitch cute and fluffy. Whoop-de-fucking-do movie, congratulations! So let's start with the things I liked. The CGI. Not trying to be mean here, but it was actually surprising to watch a film from the Disney Corporation with good CGI. And it's not just good, it's great. All of the aliens, especially Stitch and the Grand Councilwoman, look almost photoreal and blend into the live-action sets perfectly. And the Space Council scenes work well too because they have great colors, lighting, and once again, realistic CGI. The only visuals I didn't like were Jumba and Pleakley, but we'll get into that later. I liked some of Stitch's antics. Some of the visual comedy here was genuinely funny and charming, Plus, I liked some of his interactions with Lilo. I liked the neighbor lady and David. They were funny and charming. Though David wasn't as memorable as he was in the original, but whatever, he was still a goated character. That's about it. Let's get into the sauce now. First, let me make this clear. I don't necessarily want these remakes to be a shot-for-shot copy of the original, because that is redundant and boring. However, if you are going to change something, you need to make it an improvement. If it cannot be greatly improved upon, then keep that specific element the same. Or if the original movie has no major flaws, don't remake it in the first place! So just know that all the criticisms I'm about to make aren't being done because they're different from the original necessarily, but because they are worse than they were in the original. So let's start with Jumba and Pleakley, otherwise known as my favorite characters in the original film. These two aren't necessarily deep or all that tied to the emotion of the film. They serve more as comic relief, and Jumba's redemption feels earned and tangible, mostly due to him not really coming across as evil in the first place, more of just kinda crazy. And despite said craziness, he clearly has a heart of gold, so his redemption works. On top of this, he's just really funny, with a great design and perfect voice from the late great David Ogden Stiers. Rest in peace, Disney legend. Pleakley, on the other hand, is just funny and entertaining, and is one of Disney's first fruity icons. Pleakley in drag is iconic, and one of the best parts of not only the original film, but to the straight-to-DVD sequels, which really aren't that bad. Give them a watch. On top of this, not only is it awesome seeing a Disney character proudly in drag, but it's legitimately hilarious seeing these two aliens wearing extremely unconvincing human disguises, but everyone just thinks they're ugly people. It's hilarious and by far one of my favorite running gags in all of Disney. Unfortunately, these two in the remake lack the charm, comedy, and visual epicness of the original. First off, why the hell is Zach Galifianakis the voice of Jumba? Why the hell does he have an American accent? I mean, having an American accent on Jumba isn't the worst idea in concept. Honestly, it could have worked fine if it was a better voice, but Zach's voice does not fit this design at all. It's just off-putting and never got any less distracting throughout the entire movie. He didn't necessarily have to be Russian, but this voice does not fit this design.
Gambling? Who said anything about gambling? It's not gambling when you know you're going to win. Counting cards is a foolproof system. It's not illegal, it's frowned upon, like masturbating on an airplane.
It just took me out of the movie entirely. And I'm not sure if it's a translation from 2D to live action, but Jumba's design is super uncanny in live action. Some of the aliens translated well, especially Stitch and the Grand Councilwoman, but this did not. This uncanny design and poorly fitting voice just made for a really unpleasant character, which sucks because again, he was my favorite character in the original. Not only this, but this movie cut out Gantu, you know, the main villain of the movie. Say what you will about him being incompetent, but Gantu was an important part of the third act and was a legitimate, intimidating, cool threat to our heroes and their conflict. Instead, they have Jumba fill the role of the villain, but I just don't buy him as a legit threat. Even in the original, you never get the sense that Jumba is a great villain because he lacks the design and presence. He always came across more funny than threatening. So by keeping this design mostly the same in the remake, he functions even worse as a villain now because he was never meant to carry the entire movie on his back as the villain. It doesn't work when he has this goofy and funny design. Plus, Zach does not have the voice of a villain. Yeah, he voiced the Joker, but that was more of a comedic take on the Joker and wasn't really supposed to sound all that threatening.
Masturbating on an airplane.
My point is, if the main villain is a joke, then how am I supposed to feel any tension? Pleakley didn't fare much better either. He was still kinda funny, but this design is horrifying in live action. They took a warm, friendly-looking alien and turned him into this green monstrosity that I could not stand to look at. And yeah, the human holographic disguises were a huge letdown. Again, having these obvious-looking aliens poorly dressing as humans in the original was so fucking funny! But I get it, CGI is expensive, so I'm not really gonna harp on it too much. At least human Pleakley dressed in drag, but it wasn't quite enough to save the character for me. Next issue, Cobra Bubbles and the Social Worker. So in the original film, Cobra is an extremely important and memorable character. He represents the foster system that may have to take Lilo away if Nani can't provide adequate care. Despite his intimidating demeanor, we see that he is a gentle, genuinely caring man who feels bad about Lilo and Nani's situation. He seriously impacts the plot, while also being one of the most memorable side characters in Disney history. And how do they handle my boy in the remake? Oh, simple! They make him a current CIA agent with no effect on the plot. I'm not joking. You can literally cut him out of the movie and nothing would change. He comes in looking for Stitch. He pretends to be another social worker and teams up with our main social worker lady. He captures Pleakley, but then immediately lets him go to help rescue Lilo and Stitch from Jumba. So why have him capture Pleakley at all if it doesn't go anywhere? Then at the end of the movie, he promises he won't tell his higher-ups what transpired. Basically, he means he'll pretend he didn't see anything, which means everything he did didn't matter. He has no effect on the plot. He literally did nothing. which makes him so much less memorable than he should have been. Also, I thought this guy's main appeal is that he looks like a scary secret agent, but he's actually a gentle social worker. He's deceptively sweet and more than meets the eye. So replacing him with this regular looking lady kinda defeats the point and doomed her to make her unmemorable. But fun fact, this is actually the original voice actress of Nani. So that's pretty cool. But I wish her character was regulated to a cameo or a different role entirely, because even though she puts on a great performance, she's not nearly as memorable as social worker Cobra Bubbles, and Agent Bubbles was even less so. Next, let's look at the tone. The original Lilo and Stitch had jokes, lots of them.
She likes your butt and fancy hair.
She thinks it's fancy?
But it also knew when to slow down and get serious. But this movie never stops. Several of the deep, emotional, and heavy scenes are undercut and interrupted by loud and obnoxious jokes. And that's another thing about this movie. It's obnoxious. It's so loud and overly energetic to the point where it imbalances the emotional moments. The original, however, knew when the tone needed to quiet down, which is part of the reason why it's one of Disney's most emotionally effective films to date. It makes you feel every emotion on the spectrum. But this movie is so preoccupied with showing Stitch acting crazy and hawking loogies that it forgets to make us feel things. Oh, and if we're talking about feeling things, let's get back to Lilo and Nani. Like I said at the beginning, Lilo and Nani are the emotional core of the film. The main conflict, including Stitch's character arc, stems around the strained relationship of these two sisters and the impending sense of dread that they won't be able to see each other anymore. The emotional core stems from Nani's desperation to stay with Lilo and Lilo's desperation to teach Stitch to be good. And a big factor in this is the theme of family. Specifically, Ohana means family, family means no one gets left behind. This message is so integrally tied into the film that it's kind of ridiculous. Jumba and the Grand Councilwoman see the power and meaning of family and decide to let Stitch stay with Nani and Lilo. Nani sees that Stitch truly understands the importance of family now and refuses to leave either him or Lilo behind because that's what her parents taught her and Lilo, is to leave no one behind. This message is as important to this film as the message of loving and accepting yourself is to Shrek, or accepting who you are and knowing your role and responsibilities is to Lion King, or that true beauty comes from within in Beauty and the Beast, or that intelligence and humanity aren't strictly human traits in Planet of the Apes. Like all of these films, the theme of Ohana is deeply ingrained into the movie itself and cannot truly function without it. The scene where this message first comes up sticks in your mind and serves as Nani's motivation for the rest of the film. It's an important scene that sets the tone and theme for the rest of the film. This is quite possibly the most important part of the movie. So what does the remake do? In the remake's version of this scene, Nani says, and I'm paraphrasing here because I can't find the clip, "I know what Mom and Poppy taught you about Ohana, but this is reality, Lilo. You need to start living in reality." Yeah, they cut out her main motivation being Ohana means family and replaces it with reality sometimes isn't very kind to us. And sometimes your family will leave to do other things. If you love them, let them go. And I've seen a lot of people complain about that, but here's the thing. Hot take incoming, but that isn't a completely awful idea and concept. It's not as good as the classic Ohana means family message, but it would have been different enough to keep me interested. But it didn't work here because the movie couldn't stick to this or any solid motivation for Nani. Earlier in the film, they show that Nani declined to go to her dream school full ride because she felt like she had to stay with Lilo. Okay, that falls into the Ohana means family category, but then they have Nani say this reality bullshit, so her motivation isn't Ohana means family? Then at the end of the movie, she does move away to her dream school, and this would have been a fine ending and would have fallen in line with the message of being family doesn't always stick together, but that's okay, instead of being no one gets left behind. It would have been perfectly bittersweet and a solid ending to this remake. But then at the very end, Lilo and Nani use Jumba's portal gun to visit each other no matter what? You know what that screams? It sure doesn't scream this reality bullshit speech to me. It screams, Ohana means family! This movie couldn't stick to one theme or motivation. It tried to juggle both. Going along with that, this movie also outsources several of the emotional scenes to be between Nani and the social worker and Nani the neighbor, instead of them being focused only on Lilo and Nani. It's straying away from the message of Ohana means family and focuses more on Nani doing her own thing. But then it has that bullshit cop-out ending where Lilo and Nani use a portal gun to visit each other whenever because sisters stick together, because, how do I put it, no one gets left behind. Pick a side, movie! Either have the emotional core be family sticks together no matter what, or have it be sometimes it's okay for family to move on. If you love them, let them go. You can't do both because by having both, these themes just water each other down! But this movie didn't want to pick a consistent theme because that would mean it would have a stronger and sadder emotional core like the original. Because God forbid the children in the audience feel sad during our movie, and that's the biggest problem. This movie didn't have the balls the original did. It was too afraid to have a villain redeem himself and become a good guy. It was too afraid to have the scary big guy be a kind social worker. It was too afraid to stick to one message and have a true bittersweet ending, because this movie is watered down and toothless. And you know what pisses me off the most? The director had the audacity to claim that this movie was trying to be more emotionally deep than the original. In an article that I'll link below, director Dean Fleischer-Camp stated that they cut out Gontu because he didn't work so well in live action, and, quote, "And also, I do stand by the decision, because I feel like a lot of the things that, in trying to ground these characters more and tell a story with a little more emotional depth, especially between the sisters, I feel like you have to free up real estate to allow that breathing room to do those things." End quote. No! You cannot tell me that this movie is more centered around the emotional depth of the sisters when it didn't choose a strict emotional motivation for Nani and didn't commit to either no one gets left behind or if you love them, let them go. You cannot tell me you made a more emotionally deep story when cheap jokes and goofy moments are in place of slow ones, undermining all the emotional scenes. And you cannot tell me this is a more emotionally deep story when it has this cop-out ending with muddled messages that feels cheap and lacks the distinct bite and strength of the original movie's message and plot. That's because this movie is toothless and was too afraid to make the audience sad. But people will still defend this one and say it's better because it focuses more on the found family than blood family. Even though Stitch presented found family in the original! Stitch felt out of place, like he didn't belong, like the ugly duckling, but he found a new family and then finally felt like he fit in. This is a perfect representation of found family! But in this remake, Stitch is basically only regulated to be funny and cute. He's barely anything more than window dressing. I'm sorry, but I legitimately cannot understand how anyone could like this one over the original. I can absolutely understand liking it because on its own, it's pretty fun and cute, but there is literally nothing in here that improves upon the original. This feels absolutely soulless because this is not a worthy, heartfelt adaptation of Lilo and Stitch. This is the soulless, emotionless Hallmark movie made for Disney Channel, Lifetime original movie-ass version of Lilo and Stitch, but at least the girl and the alien were cute! 4 out of 10! Aloha, everyone! Okay guys, I know I yelled a lot, but honestly this one isn't even worth getting that mad over. Because honestly, there are worse remakes out there. This would have ranked probably like 8th place on my list, so that means there's at least 4 of the remakes worse than it. Honestly, it's not the worst. That being said, if you made it to the end, thanks for watching. I hope you all have a great day. Stay safe.